Hey, I'm Andrea Runnels, also known as the Social Studies Whisperer. And yes, I am passionate about American history, and I'm a huge history nerd. I also was a teacher for 16 years. I left the public school classroom because I want to help support English language learners from the outside. And by helping teachers, I can help support those kids. I also left the classroom to be a champion for kids with ADHD. So a lot of the activities that I include in my social studies topics are things that are modified to meet the needs of my two special populations, because I feel that English language learners are one of the most, I just don't even have the words. They have so much potential. There's so much possibility if a teacher just takes the time to believe in a child and just show them that they have so much to offer, and that being an English language learner is not special education. If you are an English language learner, that means you probably know more than one language, and that means you are smarter than the rest of the kids. And so I will include a pep talk just for kids at the end of this, because some of the best work I did in the classroom was building up my kiddos who were not the typical norm, like my gifted learners, my English language learners, and my kids with ADHD. The whole entire reason why I took the gifted endorsement was to better meet the needs of my kids who were English language learners, because I felt that they were not being identified the way that they should. And so this course is going to give you the opportunity to modify your curriculum in a way that is easy and that will be best practices for all kids. And so I'm using the lens of social studies to help you, because what it is like a scrapbook of sorts, in like a digital guide to setting up your English language learners for success the way that I did in the classroom my last year. And so included are a lot of social studies ideas, because I was departmentalized and taught science and social studies. And as a social studies whisperer, super passionate about social studies. Okay, I believe in connecting the past to the present, and I believe in making content relevant. And to do that, you also need to include people of diversity. And so that's super, super, super important. Okay, so I hope that this gives you a lot of practical tips and a lot of inspiration so that you can set yourself up for success, for modifying your content for English language learners, and then therefore the kiddos are set up for success. Because if you take that time to build that relationship with those kiddos, then you will be amazed at the progress they will make. I had kids coming in not speaking English, and at the end of the year, I was mind blown. They were reading on like second or third grade reading level. I mean, mind blowing. It just takes one teacher to make a difference. And the fact that you're watching this right now means that you care. Okay? Thank you so much. A little background first. I want you to think about your comfort level with where you are with modifying curriculum. Maybe you have no experience at all, and that's okay. Maybe you do have some training, but you've just been too busy. That's probably more likely the case. So what this is going to do, like I said, there's a reason it's called a quick start guide, because it's going to help you with some easy strategies. I'm not asking you to fill out paperwork upon paperwork upon paperwork and do these really complicated things. Okay, first of all, I will be using the words English language learners and ESOL interchangeably, or ELLs, because those are the terms that are familiar to me. I realize in other states, your students who are English language learners are referred to by other program types. But I'm from Georgia, and those are the terms that I'm familiar with. Also, I will say newcomers, and by newcomers, I mean students who might be a level 1. Okay, let's think about levels first of all. In the book, I refer to WIDA levels, WIDA. And I have a link to WIDA.us to help you get a little background upon the different WIDA levels, because the way the levels go from like beginning student to like exiting the ESOL program. And so it's kind of important to be familiar with that before you get further upon your study. And it's in each subject level varies as well. So that website has a tremendous blog, and so that's a great place to start. And I've also included tons of helpful links at the end of this. Okay. And so thank you so much for watching, and think about where you are now, what level you're at, and then hopefully by the end you'll be ready to level up. Okay, let's get started. Okay, this one I'm going to show you with a screen share, but before I do, I want to get up close and personal. Let's talk about best practices for all students, for all subjects. Textbooks, no. Just stop. I implore you, just stop. If you're using textbooks, even if your school tells you to use them, which I don't exactly know what school districts will be telling you to do that, but you have to find a way to circumvent that, because that is so antiquated and that is not going to hold kids' attention, especially in social studies. There's so many great resources out there, and you have Pinterest, and you have Teachers Pay Teachers, and you have Google, and you have me. You can email if you need help, because I taught all the subjects. Social studies is my favorite, but come on, just stop. And so, great alternative to just doing same old would be stations. And you know what? When I student taught in the 1990s, we did centers. And for me, I just called centers stations because that just sounds more fancy. Station Nation, that's what it's all about, doing stations. And there are a couple of different ways to do stations, especially in social studies. But for me, when I did math, I found that small group instruction was the best way to go, because you get that like one-on-one sense of who's getting the content and who is not. And so the way I organized it for math was the same way I organized it for social studies. When I did like the guided workshop method, I would do like a 15-minute introduction and mini lesson, and then like I would do like 45 minutes of stations. And this is not something I did every day. Stations are kind of exhausting to do every day. This maybe might be like a once in a while thing, or it's a great Friday activity, because it doesn't take tons of planning. So basically what I would do was like one station would be the teacher, and one station would be a partner activity, and one station would be a sit down and be quiet activity. Because for the partner or group activity, the kids were allowed to sit on the floor, and you know, that's the one that if it got too noisy, that one went away. And it was always something that was a review or something that the kids wouldn't have had questions about. And it was something that maybe like matching cards or some kind of a game, so that if they didn't get to it, that was okay. And the independent activity was always something that was due later in the week. So for the small group, the way I had it structured was I would have kids sit on the floor, and lots of times I would sit on the floor with them too. And then if they didn't understand the concept, then they could stay at the small group and rotate. And I didn't do any kind of like ability grouping per se for social studies, but I just started out with table groups. But you could totally do that. You could totally do that. And then do not start with your low group, because you will never get to your high group. And don't think that you never need to meet with your high group, because those kids need attention too. You just need to check in with them. Don't just assume that they're okay and they can just like be their own teachers, because they need that attention as well. Because lots of times those higher learners are struggling with self-doubt and perfectionism and all of that stuff. I'm gifted certified too. Those populations are both near and dear to my heart, as a mama and as a teacher. So make sure you're checking in with them as well. And the thing is, with my stations, I told the kids, like if I was doing a small group workshop model, I was like, if you don't understand this, you can stay over here. And oftentimes the kids would. And then maybe they stayed the whole time to hear the whole lesson again. And I would do like different examples. And so by the time they heard it more than once, they would get it. And have your kids who are English language learners follow the stations as well. Don't make them sit out, because lots of times the stations are really fun activities, and they can kind of just like watch or just kind of copy what the other kids are doing, because it's not that much of a chunk of instruction. Okay, and when they do the independent activity, then they can be working on something on their level. Okay, because you always want those kids to feel included. The other structure for stations I did was called the floating teacher. And I just made that up, because basically I was not positioned at any one station. I kind of floated and checked on all of the stations. Now, if there was one that was a little trickier to understand, then I might stay there and explain it first. And this was especially awesome when I had a student teacher in the room, because she could like facilitate one of the stations. So I would have directions set up in sheet protectors, and I would have the stations organized. And I've also done like learning menus and choice boards and all kinds of stuff that I'll talk about another time. But with this kind of station, and the teacher can kind of like, I would have like 5 activities, and the good thing was this is like always something that took like 3 days of stations, and it just depends on your time frame. I did this with the Civil War activities, and I had bought a station set from I think Fifth in the Middle is their name, of like it goes along with a book. And always make your stations integrated with literacy, and that way if they are taking up more time, then there you go, you're covering literacy standards as well. And so it's not like you're just wasting time, because I know that the emphasis is not so much on social studies anymore, but if you integrate literacy, then it's a win-win. I would 100% integrate literacy into social studies, and vice versa, especially in reading and nonfiction standards. So I would just kind of monitor and see like who needed help, or like if the station was out of supplies or stuff like that. And so it kind of gives you better opportunity for classroom management, because the kids are staying on task if you're like all up in their business, right? So try out both of those methods, and I'm going to show you some examples with a screen share of how you could structure it. And there's no right way to do stations, because it all depends on your class makeup. I've had classes before where I couldn't do stations because their behavior, like there might be 1 or 2 kids who their behavior was terrible, and they might mess it up for everybody. Or I had like 5 or 6 of those kids. And if you only have 1 or 2 kids that are off task, then you have them sit down with that textbook, because that's what I did. But if it's the majority of the class and you can't even lead your small group if you're doing the workshop model, then forget it. Don't have the kids do partner activities, because you shouldn't be doing crowd control while you're trying to do small group instruction. At times I took it old school, and I was like, we're going to do workbook, paper, and pencil until the behavior straightens up. And let me tell you, it did. So just something to think about. Okay, this is broken down into different sections based on like my top 10 hacks. Teacher hacks are a great thing, like my little tips and tricks that I use to modify curriculum that the kids didn't even know. And I share some that relate to social studies as well. So you might accidentally end up liking social studies when this is over. So some of the topics I'm going to cover are setting up your classroom space and organizing your classroom library, primarily like for social studies or just to have more engagement from your English language learners. Also, I'm going to cover with setting up your classroom more like how I use the timeline on the wall as a preview, because it's important to preview things. I'm also going to cover posting language objectives in addition to whatever required curriculum standards that you are supposed to have. I'm also going to cover like some ways that I used whole brain teaching and did like hands-on vocabulary, and ways that I did used Teach and had the kids had student-directed learning, and also gave the students opportunities to build speaking and listening skills, because all teachers are ESOL teachers. If your students are pulled out for services, then that's generally not too much of the day. And so it's very important to include those kids all through the day. That way you can increase their language acquisition even more, okay? Some other things that are going to be covered are going to be like anytime activities that English language learners can do, and like how to make a newcomer kit. Because I don't know how many times I was sitting there, like maybe it was during my planning time, or walking out the door, or in the middle of a reader's theater presentation. Yes. Or right before standardized testing. True story, it happened. And I got, Mrs. Reynolds, please send someone to get your new student. Like out of nowhere. That's how it was done at my school. Like you didn't know. You didn't get a heads up you were getting a new student. You were very lucky if you found out the day before. And so it's a good idea to have some stuff on hand in case you get a new student who does not speak English, because chances are the child might not even speak a language that you speak. I was lucky to know Spanish, but there were times when I got some students that spoke languages that I don't know. And so it's important to have a way to communicate and some like ways to have the basic needs met and kids to ask for help if they need it from a newcomer kit. Okay. I'm also going to cover integrating the arts because I think that's really, really important. And I'm also going to cover my picture dictionaries that I created to be a more supportive type of study guide for English language learners. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful and I hope that you learn a lot. And let's get started with setting up our classroom space with English language learners in mind.